Bell back here with the Workforce live stream. We are the premier media sponsor for Unleash and for the live stream. And thanks to BetterUp as our sponsor once again. And so we're bringing in Jill Larson, who is the Chief People Officer and Executive Vice President for Metadata. So Jill, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So the conference so far has been pretty good?
It's been great. This is a fun conference. A lot of disruptors, a lot of new technology, a lot of interesting dialogue. Some I agree with, some I don't. It's a lot of fun. So
right. Now you went to the Unleash conference in London?
I did. I went to the London one. I'm speaking at this one in Vegas and then also in Paris. And it's been great. It was actually great to be an attendee last time and just sort of experience it.
Great. Well, awesome. So Jill, your talk is about women in technology, and so my first question is, it's called Women in Technology, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Women in Technology. Are we there yet?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So my first question is, where is there?
I think there is a place where we feel like all voices are heard, where we believe that women have parity and are in as senior positions as males, especially in technology, which is largely male dominated, as you can see by a lot of the statistics that are out there. And I think for us it's also feeling like we are changing and making an impact, and I think women feel like they can contribute more, and they're currently not really able to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we've kind of established where there is. Second, are we there?
Oh no, we're not there yet. Although I'm really encouraged by the dialogue that's happening right now and the discourse and even some of the laws, like in California, around requiring a female on public boards. And I've talked to a lot of women who really don't like that law, quite frankly. Like, they think it's unfortunate that we needed to have a law to do this. But the reality is it's going to create momentum and more voices of women at the table, and I think that's critically important as we think about these next generations coming into the workforce.
Right, and that makes an interesting point as well. So we start talking about generations. I mean, what have you seen since you first got into HR versus what we're seeing today?
Well, 5 years ago when I got into HR, no, I'm just
yes,
kidding. I wish. I think HR for me coming in, I started as a recruiter, and so I really got to see that perspective of the candidate. I was actually at an agency, I was a headhunter, and so I got to see that perspective of, being on both sides. And I think from an HR perspective, I saw the generalist, policy program, really not business oriented, and it was something for me that was critically important in my career. I've tended to take roles where the companies are going through a lot of transformation or disruption because I really try to create people strategies and talent strategies that are aligned with driving business outcomes. So a lot of evolution there. The technology has evolved significantly. The role of HR has really elevated, I think. I think our voices are very impactful. But the pressure's on, especially with AI and automation, and roles in HR are starting to change. And now you have data scientists in HR, and just things you hadn't seen, 10, 20 years ago. So.
Well, and I think that brings up another interesting point with artificial intelligence making such an entry into talent acquisition. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, what was TA before versus what it is now with all this new technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think TA for a long time has been sort of resume receptacles, going after hard copy resumes. If resumes were poorly written, you never considered the candidate. There were just too many resumes to the jobs that you had. It's very process driven. And I think now recruiting is much more around the engagement, the experience, the differentiation. How do you sell a candidate who has multiple offers? Because we are in an interesting talent market, quite frankly. How do you start to build skills with candidates so that they can understand the journey? And so I think recruiters have become more salespeople than they were in the past. And then AI's really helped with that. I think AI makes it simpler to automate parts of the process, to help candidates understand what your company's really like, so that the recruiter can really spend time figuring out the fit and the skill sets.
Okay, so now keeping on the theme of AI, how has it really impacted talent acquisition? Is there like something you can put your finger on and say, this is what talent acquisition, or this is what AI has done for talent acquisition?
Yeah, I think for companies that have used it, because there's still a lot of companies that haven't yet, I think for recruiters it's made it simpler to find pools of talent so they don't have to do the sourcing themselves. I think in the ATSs and the CRMs, it's made it a lot easier to actually have keywords and use natural language processing to match candidates to jobs, which is silly, but ATSs really couldn't do that for a long time. And so you had to do a lot of the searching yourself, and so now there's a lot of algorithms that help with that, which make it easier to get reduced slates so that recruiters can be much more impactful. So I do think we're really feeling AI in a lot of different places.
So does that mean the ATS is dead, or is it always going to be around?
You know, I think legally we are required to have some sort of tracking mechanism, at least in the United States and in many other countries, around how a candidate is introduced to a company and who we're actually attracting. So until those laws evolve, I do think the need for a database that tracks that is important. But could that database look or feel like something else? Could it be less important as you have sort of a data warehouse and portals and things? Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I think that's also why you've seen something like LinkedIn change their marketing strategy, and they're now calling themselves more of an ATS. They're trying to move because they're actually losing their addressable market if they don't. And so I just think that's why you're seeing it evolve.
Does it play into unconscious bias, the artificial intelligence? Does it help? Is it that,
I think it's
do they not necessarily play together?
No, I think it's too early to tell. I think a lot of people are making assumptions based on data. So unstructured data they create as structured, and then they say that creates a trend. And there's a number of AI companies here on the floor that say, you know, we can find you the best culture match for your company. Well, if I have, 73% males in my company and I want to increase diversity and inclusion, do I really want to measure candidates and have candidate slates come through that reflect 73%? Or do I want to think about that a little bit differently? How do I ask the right types of questions to attract the kind of candidates that we want to have diverse representation? So I do think there's a lot of bias in kind of who creates those questions and who looks at that data. I think as we have more pools of data, we can start to create trends, and it'll be a lot more reliable.
So what can you tell me about metadata and what your hiring is like?
Sure. So Metadata is a cloud software company. We're almost entirely software as a service, but we've been around for 20 years. So we have almost 5 million patient records. So we really work within clinical trials and the management of clinical trials, and then also on the commercial side, once pharma has actually had the drugs approved by the FDA, how's the drug doing? So we're looking for, cloud architects, Java architects, security, DBAs, and then data scientists, and folks that have real experience with machine learning. And that's really hard to find. So we're also looking at trying to build those skills, and how do you start to build those skills in our employee population as well.
Not so much life scientists then,
no,
more data scientists.
Yeah, so for us in clinical, we do have a lot of folks that come from pharma. We have folks from the FDA and that sort of thing, but I would say we're more of a technology company than a pharma life sciences company, and so we need a blend, but it's actually easier to teach tech folks life sciences than it is to teach life sciences folks tech, if that makes sense. So we've actually learned strategy-wise that's actually a better play for us.
Surprisingly enough, it even makes sense for me.
Good.
You do a great job explaining this stuff. All right, so you were at Cisco before that.
Yes, I was for 5 years.
Talk about the difference with Cisco versus Metadata and the hiring challenges that you dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, the Cisco Challenge is a company that's trying to disrupt itself, which is not what Metadata is. Metadata is not disrupting itself, it's just trying to gain momentum and grow. Cisco's trying to move from hardware and networking infrastructure to being more of a software, cloud, and as-a-service company. So it's a very different type of skill set. So that 5 years was very much around transforming the recruiting organization and creating a talent brand around Cisco that was about the employee value proposition. It's called the People Deal at Cisco, about the employees and their journey and the mission of the company, and then really getting recruiters skilled to attract that type of talent, because Cisco's a 30-year-old company. Cisco's a 30-year-old company, and it's a company that people think of as like your backup offer at universities, or my parents worked at Cisco, do I really want to work there? So we really needed to reframe that, and I think that was critically important.
All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
Has the Me Too movement had an effect yet on women in technology, or is it still a little too early to tell?
Yeah, I think there's some real pros of the Me Too movement. I think that the reality for us right now is that you want companies to do these things because it makes sense for their mission, for what they want to do for employees. You don't want companies to be forced to do things that are not natural to kind of how they think about talent. And so I think the thing about Me2 is it puts a lot of pressure and it starts the dialogue out there. It definitely makes companies look at their behavior and the standards that they're holding their executives and leaders to and their employees to. But I also think we need to have a balance because there's a lot of momentum out there on social, and even companies that are doing a lot of things that are forward thinking or releasing information on paid parity are getting attacked by social trolls and folks out there. You know, a company like Citigroup that actually came out with some data were really attacked. And so it's a fine balance if you're a CHRO of a company of how do you do the right thing but also do it in a way that's thoughtful for the brand, the customer, and your employees.
Mm-hmm. And again, let's go back to metadata. What are you doing specifically to promote women in technology?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot. I mean, we're looking a lot at the front end of the funnel, which what I mean by that is bringing in folks from STEM, getting people super excited about both life sciences and tech and how you can solve social problems for patients in the world, which is really sticky for students in high school and universities. We're also looking specifically with women, we're looking at, you know, how are we promoting, what are we doing, and we have dashboards and data that we talk about a lot, especially when we start to have promotions come up. How are we thinking through that? When we have critical key roles open, are we making sure we have diverse slates and really looking for the best candidate out there, and not just promoting someone from within, but making sure we look both internally and externally. And that's a critical part of a practice, I think, because as much as you want momentum internally, again, if you're 70-something% male, the likelihood that that's going to be yet another male who gets promoted, it just kind of sets you back if it's not the right candidate. And as long, you know, again, best candidate for the job has always been my my philosophy. And I think if you have diverse slates, all the right things happen.
Okay, now are you based in New York or are you on the West
So
Coast?
I live in Boston. I work in New York City. I did commute to the West Coast for 5 years for Cisco. So I have an amazing husband.
That
who,
must have been a challenge.
Yeah, it was. 12 hours of flying a week is a lot. But yeah, so I'm used to commuting, and I really love the work. So I kind of go to where the work is.
So are you primarily hiring for New York City or
No, we're all
company-wide?
over. Yeah, we're all over the place. We've just opened a pretty large office in Boston. We acquired a company called Shift in Boston. We have offices in San Francisco, in Houston, in Cincinnati, as well as New York, and then London, Germany, all over Asia. So for us, we're hiring globally. We're an international company, and we've got a lot of growth in those regions as well.
Oh, excellent.
So.
Well, I want to thank Jill Larson for spending some time with us today at Unleash. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Great conversation. Once again, Workforce is the premier media sponsor for the Unleash Conference 2019 in fabulous Las Vegas. And we again want to thank BetterUp for being our sponsor. Once again, thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Make sure and follow us on social media and check us out after the broadcast, and because everything will be posted on workforce.com.